movement for justice which seeks to win animals the above stated negative rights. So this is how I define veganism and animal rights movement. And I do have a clause for, to the best extent possible, given the constraints of living in a non-vegan world. Like, for medicine, if there is any life-threatening medicine that a vegan needs, they don't have a vegan alternative for that, right? And when it comes to a life or death situation, even though it's undesirable to violate another one for our subsistence, the survival instinct might take over, and they may end up, acting in a non-vegan way when there is no vegan alternative for that. And that doesn't mean we should be happy with that. We should go on to develop vegan alternatives. That is the spirit of veganism. On top of that, why I think veganism is a moral imperative is based on this thought experiment, right? We all believe that morality is subjective, but then there is this concept of justice. Humans are able to develop universal perspectives, even though, for the most part, they look at things from their point of view. And when we look at things from a universal perspective, it becomes pretty obvious what kind of world we would want if we were to be the ones vulnerable, if we were the ones to be at the mercy of someone mightier than us, right? I would like to invoke John Rawls's thought experiment, the original position Veil of Ignorance thought experiment, where he basically says, if you were to stand behind a veil where you did not know the circumstances of your birth, and if you were to just observe the world that there is, you see so much inequality, you see so much suffering, you see so much inequity, so to speak. And at that point, you would ask yourself what the best configuration of this world would be, so that you could enjoy maximal happiness, or maximal well-being, so to speak, not just happiness, and minimize your chance of getting caught in a situation that is so undesirable for the rest of your life. Okay, you would automatically think of creating such a world. Okay, and when you look at our natural world, we would ideally like to create a world without predation, because you could be a prey animal and it wouldn't be desirable for you to get eaten alive, ripped apart, while you're still breathing and fully conscious. That happens in the wild. That cannot be changed right now. The next best world we would want is a vegan world. A vegan world is one in which no sentient beings are bred into existence solely for the purpose of being violated for the benefit of another moral agent. Okay. If we look at the natural world that we live in, there are like 80 billion land animals that are bred into existence each year solely for the purpose of being violated. There are 2.7 trillion marine animals that are killed each year. If that is the kind of world we live in, and if there are 8 billion humans, the possibility of us being born into one of those non-human animals is much higher than the possibility of us being born a human. And given these odds stacked against us, if we were to stand at this original position to see what the best possible world would be for us, given a chance that we could be born as someone who is not in the best of situations, we would automatically demand a vegan world, right? We would automatically choose to create a vegan world. But just because we are humans right now, we have forgotten what we would want if we were the animals, right? And we are complacent in violating these animals for our benefit. And that to me is a hypocritical position, right? It's an unprincipled position. I wouldn't call it necessarily hypocritical, but it's unprincipled to start with, because when you are the victim, when you could have possibly been the victim, you would want a world to be a fair, more just place. But then when you are in the position of the privileged and in the position of the oppressor, you are content with the predatory, suffering laden world that we currently have. And that to me is extremely unprincipled. And this is just a variation of the alien invasion hypothesis, which I'll be relying on a lot. But I will get to it in the, as the debate progresses further. So this is my opening statement. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, so I would like to start this by saying nobody gives a fuck what you think. I'm so sorry, but not a single person gives a fuck about like any emotional appeals that you add into this, such as we kill a bunch of animals, we do this, that. Nobody gives a single fuck. The second thing is that you have two problems. You first have added that the golden rule is some sort of principle in which everyone must abide by. That's nonsense. We don't abide by it to this very day. The second, to this very day, whether we're children, whether we're adults, for example, adults forcibly take children to the doctor, strap them down to pallet boards like I had to do with my daughter when we went to the dentist in order for them to receive dental care. Would I like that done to myself as an adult? Hell no. But I had it done for my daughter so that she could get her teeth done. The what mattered in that moment was the result, right? Would be that she would get her teeth done, period. The second thing that I find to be a huge problem is the assumption that animals can give informed consent. You make these assumptions by invoking negative rights. And I just want to be clear about something. Now that you've invoked negative rights, rights as a concept in the first place, you have now gotten down to legal principles, and I'm going to eat you alive for it. The last thing about this is that, again, I'm not interested in emotional appeals. I'm not interested in hearing about how we create animals for the purposes of eating. We do things to animals for the purposes of getting their milk or their wool or whatever. Totally and completely uninterested in that kind of rationalization that's emotional in nature. I'm interested in the facts. You have not brought the facts. You brought philosophical mumbo jumbo that nobody gives a shit about. The last thing is, the last time we talked, you made an implication that it was exploitive. So here's what I find interesting. What you said today contradicts a lot of what you said a couple days ago when I talked with you. When I talked with you, you gave me a hypothetical about that of a cow, about that of a human and I stuck on an island, and there's this plant, or there's 80,000 plants. You ended up changing it to 80,000 plants, right? And then I was supposed to figure out what I would do in order to survive in this situation in which I was on this island with 80,000 plants and another person. I said I would recruit that person so that we could do agriculture and live. And then you change that person to a cow, and I said, okay, I would recruit that cow by putting a plow on the back of the cow, using that plow and the cow in order to grow more food so that we both could eat and I wouldn't have to kill the cow. I asked you if it was exploitive. You said yes, because I wouldn't do it to the human. I said, how's that not me doing it to the human? I said I would recruit them, and you said that's also exploitive. Now that you have just said today that that action in and of itself is not necessarily bad because it's something that I'm doing in a survivalist situation, are you now like conceding and taking back the part where you completely complained about me saying that I would do that?
Okay, can I get to speak? Are you done, Patty? Okay. So you made a lot of points here. The first one was no emotional appeals. I'm not exactly appealing to emotion. I'm just appealing to a principle as to what you would want for yourself if you were in the victim's shoes. Okay. To say that nobody follows golden rule is not an argument. It doesn't matter if nobody follows the golden rule. That's just an argument by assertion. That's just you stating the way things are. But morality deals with also some level of normativity, how things ought to be, right? So in that regard, I think the golden rule is a fantastic rule to
No, it
determine
doesn't.
what is moral, what is not. No, you're not supposed to interject. Okay, I did not interject when you were speaking.
No, I didn't agree to that. So what I agreed to was
No,
that in
then I will also
instances
interject
in
while you
which
speak.
things are
Okay, this is
no,
what you want to
what I
debate.
agreed to,
I
what I
would also
agreed
interject
to,
while you speak. I would also
I
interject while you
I
speak.
think that's fine. I think that's
Okay,
fine because what
okay.
I
Don't mute me
agreed
when I do
to,
that. Okay, don't
I'm
mute me
not
when
going
I
to
do
Look,
mute.
just
Don't mute
like
me when I
Please
do
do
that.
that.
I want to keep
Well, you
this
did
on
last time, right?
track, right? Hang on, like I didn't interrupt anybody, but well, I guess I did to say this, but like minimal interjections, they're probably going to happen, but like please, let's just keep it to a minimum if we can.
So let me explain what I agreed to. What I agreed to was that I would not engage in like unreasonable interjections. I said that if something's being strawmanned or something is particularly egregious, I would immediately respond to it because I don't believe people should be allowed to taint conversations and let their whole point go through if that is clearly going to taint the conversation. And so if you
Okay.
make claims, right, which are strong claims, and they are not like immediately and reasonably respond to, I think that that is a problem.
Okay, if that is the case, then I will also subjectively determine which one of your claims are egregious, and I will jump in, I will butt in, I will interrupt
That's
your flow of thought, and
wonderful.
I will do
That's
exactly the same.
wonderful.
Okay. All
That's
right. Let's see
wonderful
how long.
because the reality
Let's see how long
is
it is
that
before I'm muted.
that's
Let's see how
wonderful
long before it
because
is I'm muted. At which
No,
point I'll be
no,
you're
talking.
not
no,
gonna you're
nobody's
not
gonna
gonna be
mute you,
muted.
right?
I'm in the debate. I'm not gonna mute
Because
you.
because it happened last time, right? You were accusing me of using loaded language while I was just saying, "Hey, I'm just conveying the plight of animals I'm here to represent," and Just like you
Yeah,
accuse me of
because
using loaded language, I'm
because
gonna
the
accuse you of
animals
using
Look,
totally,
euphemism.
yeah,
hang,
sure,
hang, hang
Yeah,
because
on.
yeah.
the
Like
animals totally give a
I
fuck
accuse
what
you of
that
you
using
think.
may
euphemism.
that may be the
Look at
case that
look
you
at
were
how
muted
I started
before,
off the
right?
debate by look
Just
at how I
hang on.
started off the debate by giving a formal opening statement, and look at how
Jesus
Patty goes
Christ.
off. You know, like
Look, I'm trying to help you. I genuinely am, right? In the other room the other night, it wasn't a debate room, okay? This is a debate room, and moderators and admins, if they're part of the debate, they're not allowed to use their mod powers, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm moderating. Nobody is going to mute you but me, and I'm going to try my best not to do that. So
Yep.
if there's a problem, just give me a shout. I do have to step away for just a minute. I'll be back super quick. But just keep it cool.
Yep. So again, right? I don't care if you interject, and I guarantee not a single animal gives a fuck if you're here to represent them. The fact is that you are offering up some argument that morality is objective, and there's something in the ether in which builds up within that which is building up and is collecting a bunch of negative energy that is now going to be put out into the I don't know, the zeitgeist of like our humanity, which is nonsense. You're already offering that up.
no. That's not what I'm getting at. So here's the problem, right? Like when I discussed this very topic with the other non-vegans in the room, like Zoom and I think meta ethical time wasters. From with Cuddles,
Am I
all of
Zoom or
them.
Cuddles?
Wait. Let me just. No, I'm not saying you were. That's why I mentioned the individuals with whom I discussed this, right? So that it is not falsely attributed to you. Okay. I just said that they were actually having certain intuitions, which are basically feelings, and they were contorting or using moral philosophy to reason out that particular feeling. So morality is a lot about emotions. Okay, what I'm here to do is to convince people that if they were to be consistent with their emotions and their principles, it would automatically point them towards veganism. This is what I'm
Yeah.
here to do. I'm
So
not here to convince
again,
Patty because
you have
she
already come
has
to the
vested
conclusion.
interest. Wait.
You've
Let me finish.
wait. I'm not the one who kept trying to repeatedly invite people to the server so that you could have attention. So let's not confuse things here. You're the one who wanted to repeatedly invite people to the server so you can impress your friends and receive notes on the side
Okay.
when you weren't
No,
sure what to
wait.
say. Let's not do that
It's not.
here.
I'm
Let's
very sure
not
about what
do
I'm
that
here to
here.
say. It's just that
Let's
you
not
have
do
no
that here.
principles by which you abide. Okay, you have
Let's
no
not
principles
do
by which
that
you
here.
abide, and you just want
Well,
to.
that's
No, you don't
nonsense
do your
because
tax,
I
right?
live, well, that's a bit nonsense. So I
It
live
is not
my
nonsense.
life.
What is
I live
nonsense is
my
to say
life, right?
morality has nothing
So
to do with emotions. To
by
say that
saying
morality has
you have
nothing to do
no
with emotions, that is nonsensical.
by saying that I have no principles in which I
No,
live
you do.
by
You don't.
would
You
be
don't.
a
I'm sorry.
by saying I will repeat myself until you stop. By saying that I
Okay,
have
I can
no
also do
principle
this. I can also do this, and we're not going to have a productive discussion at this point.
by
By
saying there's
saying
no
morality has
by
nothing to
saying
do with emotions,
by
you
saying that I have
are.
no principles in which I
You don't.
abide by is an argument in which is nonsense. I obviously live, number one, I live in a society in which has rules and laws. I follow religion. I have personal beliefs. And by that mode, I have principles in which I abide by. You see, the problem with certain argumentation, especially argumentation that is emotional in nature, is that you invoke loaded questions. Loaded questions are not arguments, they're fallacious.
Okay, so let me address that loaded question argument. Okay, so first of all, I'm not using loaded language. I'm basically, if you accuse me of using loaded language and if you think I'm dishonest for doing so, I can accuse you of the same. Okay, you're using euphemisms, like how you use the word processed to, hide the fact that you brutally kill these animals. Okay, and then I'm here to represent the plight of animals, not toe your line. Okay, it would be dishonest if I were to downplay their suffering to, seem acceptable to you. Third point, if you can murder animals on the basis of your relativistic moral nonsense paradigms, I can choose to call what I deem what you do to animals accurately is. Okay, and what you do to animals is nothing short of
Right?
rape,
Do you have a
slavery, and
deep and
genocide.
meaningful understanding of what words mean?
I'm not going to toe your line, like I said, and it's fine.
Just asking.
I find it funny that you're a libertarian and then you have problem with the words that I use. I thought
I'm just
libertarians were supposed to be beacons of free speech. speech. I have deep understanding of the words I use. Okay.
Do you have
And
a
then
deep and meaningful
why would you
understanding of what
dissuade me?
words
Why
mean?
would you dissuade me from using the words that I feel accurately describe what happens to animals? It seems
So
like you want me to argue from a place
right.
of neutrality of actions,
It
but you
seems you
want
have
me to
two big
assume the
problems.
moral good of your actions.
Excellent. It seems you have two big problems. Do you
I
have
have a
a
lot of.
deep and meaningful understanding of what libertarianism is?
See,
And do you have a
this is
deep
what
and meaningful
I
understanding of
do,
what
right? I think
words mean?
it's a nonsensical philosophy that tells people they're not selfish enough. But that's beyond the point, right? Like you want to go
Yeah.
on red herrings and you
So
want to
it
derail the
seems like you
conversation. That's what
don't
you want to do.
have so just by that answer alone, right? In which you say it seems like a nonsensical ideology in which people shouldn't take
Oh, it is.
responsibility for their actions. It seems like you don't actually
No,
have a
that's not what I
deep
said. You're
and
not even able to
meaningful
listen to what I'm saying
understanding
because you're not interested.
in which you don't
I
have a
said it's a
deep
nonsensical ideology and tells
in
people they're not selfish enough.
which you don't have a
Patty, I'm
deep
not sure
and
this is working.
meaningful in which you don't
This is
have
what you wanted,
a
right? This is
deep
what you wanted. You wanted to
hey,
derail the
I'm just trying to
conversation.
Hang
say
on. Look,
I'm
You
just
wanted
trying
to
to say
derail the
my point.
I
conversation
said that I would
to
I'm
red
just trying to
herrings
interrupt
say
that
what
if
are
I was
irrelevant to the
trying to
everything
discussion.
went a
say.
bit sideways, right? It's
Yep.
going sideways. Let's try to get it back on the straight and narrow. If we could both try to do that, that would be much appreciated.
It seems
Okay,
like
Patty
you
made an
don't
opening statement.
have
I've
a
not been allowed
deep
to respond to it yet. Patty made an opening statement. I've not been allowed to respond to it yet. Can I get to that? I want to actually try and have a productive discussion, but Patty is hell bent on making sure that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, well, to be
I
fair,
think you're
I'm
help
telling both of you, it's not just one or the other. If we can please, because the over talking is going to make him leave, and we don't want that to happen, right?
um
I know, but let's just right. Whose turn was it to go next? Because I did step away for a second, so I didn't hear it.
So Patty gave an opening statement. She said nobody gives a damn about my emotions or how I feel or something like that. So I'm gonna have to respond to that, okay?
and
And
it's
she said,
true. Nobody cares.
no, let me respond, okay? So when I discussed morality and this topic in particular with other individuals here, they did state that they have a certain set of intuitions and feelings about this whole thing. They've seen all these documentaries like Dominion, Earthlings, and they just don't feel so strongly about it. And they've been coming up with moral bases and normative ethics and meta ethics to justify their stance. So morality has a lot to do with how you feel about certain things. Okay, and I'm here to say that if you were to be consistent with your feelings and the principles of your rationalization, you would arrive at veganism. Okay, morality is everything about feelings.
Nonsense.
Without no, you can say it's nonsense, but don't interject. Okay, you can
I just did.
give out your opinion. You can give out your opinion when you talk. Okay, if you're going to interject like that, you're just disrupting my flow of thought, and you're doing that so that you don't have to address the real arguments. Okay, which we will get to.
I just addressed it.
No, you didn't. Okay,
I said it's nonsense.
I don't
You want to hear
consider
why
it.
it's nonsense?
You know, I don't consider it enough, and I'm not done talking. Okay, you made your
Excellent.
opening statement. Let me address those points. Okay, so when you say that morality has nothing to do with emotions, you're wrong because morality ultimately concerns well-being, right, of sentient creatures, of conscious creatures. You may think that it doesn't. You may think that it does not concern the well-being of everybody, but if something bad were to happen to your loved ones, it increases their suffering quotient and decreases the well-being quotient, and you
Oh my
intuitively
god.
know, wait, you intuitively know that this has something, this was immoral. So when it comes to your loved ones, you're pretty clear about what is suffering and what is well-being and what is immoral and what is moral, and it has a direct coefficient with or correlation with how they feel. So morality has everything to do with feelings. Okay, and still, I'm not just appealing to feelings, I'm just talking as a matter of principle. How would you want to be treated if you were in the victim's shoes? That is the essence of veganism. Okay, that's not too hard to understand. It's funny that you call yourself a Christian and then you discount the golden rule as a basis for morality. Um, and then you talked about
Christianity doesn't abide by the golden rule. What are you talking about?
okay,
Are
okay,
you
that's a news
I'm
to me.
sorry. No,
I mean,
but that's
I've known that
again. No, no, no.
I've
There's
known that
no way
Christians
you
have
can
been
sit here and make
critical about
no
it.
stop.
But
There is no
I'm at least
way that
happy
you
that
can
someone's.
make claims. This is why I said I will not abide by this stupid interjection rule. There is no way that you can imply that you can straight up make personal claims in which are shit in nature, and then go,
How is
"Oh,
it
I
shit?
can't believe you
How is it
interjected
shit?
from something that is egregious." For one,
How is it shit?
Christianity
No, if you
doesn't
say morality
abide
is
by
subjective, I'm going to appeal to your
Christianity.
personal values all the time. If you say
Christianity
that
does
morality is
not
subjective,
abide
I am
by
going to
the
I'm
golden
going to refer
rule.
to your personal values all the time. Okay? If you
Jesus
say
Christ.
morality is subjective, if you say
Christianity.
morality is subjective, I am going to appeal to your personal values. So
Oh
if you
my God.
say you're a Christian,
Christianity does not abide by the golden rule. That is not how Christianity abides. Number one,
okay,
everything in which happens and which is negative in my life is not inherently immoral. For example, if
no,
a rock were
I'm
to
not saying
fall,
okay.
if
Let
a
me
rock
represent that.
were to
Let
fall,
me
if a
clarify that. Let
rock
me
were
clarify that.
to fall, I have not finished what I said. If a rock were to fall on my mother, for example, I don't believe the rock to be immoral. I believe that something negative have happened and which affected me negatively doesn't mean that morality was involved in that situation.
Okay, if somebody decided to violate your kids, you would consider that immoral, wouldn't you?
I would consider it immoral to sexually violate a child, of course.
Okay, okay, and why is that? Because it decreases their well-being, increases their suffering, causes them trauma. That's the reason, correct? So you intuitively know that morality has something to do with well-being and suffering.
No, I don't intuitively know that. There are plenty of people who, for example, marry off their children. It is not intuitive to them that this action is wrong. You have not proven, right, that these things are intuitive. They could simply be cultural.
So you're going by moral relativism, right? So what if somebody were to
At
violate your
no point in
children
this
and
conversation did I
appeal
say that I
to
was an
moral
objective
relativism?
moralist.
Oh,
Just
that's fine.
because
That's fine.
you are an objective moralist does not
No, that's
mean
fine.
that your
No, I'm not
morality
trying to
is
debunk.
true in nature.
I'm trying to make an argument for why moral relativism is not a good basis to go or to gauge morality by. Okay, if somebody who comes from such a culture who did not deem having sex with kids as immoral, but to violate your children, you would deem it immoral. You would think that they are
I
not
repeat
justified in
that.
using their moral relativism. Okay, if
Repeat
somebody who
that.
comes from a
Sorry.
culture, yeah, yeah, yeah. If somebody comes from a culture where they don't think having sex with kids is immoral, and if they were to use their moral relativism as a justification to violate your children, you would not accept their use of moral relativism to violate your children.
It,
You
whether I
think others
accept
should
it or
not.
not,
Wait,
oh
I'm not
my
done. I'm not
God,
done. I'm not
no.
done. I'm not
Whether
done.
I would
I am
accept it
not
or
done.
not,
I am not
whether
done.
I would
I am
accept it
not
or not.
done. I
I'm
am
sorry.
not done. I
You
am not done.
really
It's very
think
easy to
that
say
you
those
should be
words.
able to just
It's
say
very easy to
egregious
say those
things
three words. I
and
am
not
not
have
done.
them
I am not
interjected?
done. I am not done. You're not letting
No,
me
this is
finish.
like actually retarded.
The only retard here is you, by the way. Yeah.
It's no, it's
Um,
actually you because you think you
no,
should be able
you.
to say egregious things and not have them and no
What is
need of
egregious
them.
about what I said?
So
I'm just giving you an analogy to help you understand why your moral
I'm
relativism is
making
a
the
nonsense
argument
tool.
by making
Why
the
it is
argument that
unprincipled to
just
use
because,
moral
oh my
relativism to
God,
justify animal holocaust.
you
Look,
I am
hang
you
giving
on.
you
really
a
I'm gonna
reason.
butt in, right? Because I think what the problem is, to be fair, like VS, this isn't like a massive criticism against you. It's just I think what the problem is you're putting quite a lot on the table at the same time, and people are commenting in the chat that that's the case. That like you're putting quite a lot out, and like it's
No,
gonna be
ST,
hard to. Sorry, yes, what?
ST, can I talk to you? Can I just respond to you? See, initially I
Yeah.
made my opening statement. I just gave the example definition of veganism in a very firm, polite manner without any personal attack. And then I explained
Mm.
why there is an imperative force behind the ideology of veganism by giving the John Rawls' original position thought experiment. And I just finished it there. Patty had to come out saying it's nonsense. Nobody cares what you feel, and all
and
this,
that's
right? Like,
true.
Yeah, but now if you notice
it doesn't matter.
now,
Wait.
we're
I'm not done, right? And then she laid out actually 4 points during that time. I laid out the definition of veganism, and I just gave one single reason as to why veganism has an imperative force behind it, right? Patty laid out 4 arguments where she said emotional appeals, that part, and then golden rule is nonsense, and then she said forcing kids in the dentist, this thing, and then animals cannot give informed consent. And then she addressed my hypothetical that I gave last time as if hypotheticals cannot be changed. So Patty made literally 5 points,
I
and when
didn't
I
ask
get to the
you to
first point, when I try to get to the first point, she's constantly interjecting to disrupt my flow of thought. Okay, that's unfair, and I hope you would
that
rein in on her for that. and let me make my arguments. I've still not been able to make a response to the first opening statement that she gave.
Right, but the problem is this is supposed to be about veganism, and now for some reason we're on Christianity. Like this is all over the place.
Dude,
No, because I
no,
didn't even mention the word
I'm
golden rule.
literally
Right?
just trying to
She said the
address this
golden rule.
one thing that he says. I don't care about his definition of veganism. He can make any definition of veganism he wants to. That's not the problem here. He is now asserting objective morality as truth. That's the problem. So I am
No, let
merely
me get to that. Let me
and
get
just
to
to
that.
be clear, you have now said that my disagreement with someone else's moral principle is some sort of statement in which there must be some objective form of moral truth. And that's nonsense.
Okay, let me respond to that. I didn't say there is an objective form of moral truth. I'm just
Are
saying it
you
is
an objectivist?
unprincipled. Wait, let me respond. I'm just saying it is
Wow,
unprincipled
what
of
a
you.
dishonest fuck. Like, oh my gosh.
Patty,
You
to
are
look
dishonest.
to be fair, you did cut him off
No,
there. There's just not going to be any denying that, and we're trying to keep it to a minimum.
so yeah, so what I'm trying to say here is, uh, morality, let's say it is subjective, okay? I am arguing from a subjective framework, but what I'm saying here is, you would not accept somebody else using their subjective relativistic framework to harm those whom you love. Therefore, it is unprincipled of you to use your subjective moral framework to harm somebody else's loved ones, somebody else's children, just because they don't belong to our
Absolutely
species.
not.
That does not matter. Okay, that is exactly what you're doing, and that is unprincipled. If you wouldn't accept
No.
your children being violated in the name of moral subjectivity and relativism, it is unfair of you to use moral subjectivity and relativism to do the same to offsprings, babies of other mothers and fathers of different species. That is my argument.
Okay, so number one, okay, so you have now tried to attempt to you've now attempted to bridge a gap, right? And unfortunately, you haven't actually bridged it. Number one, all subjective norms and all subjective things come from beliefs. You're right about this one thing, right? That our emotional ideas, our emotions are what helps build our moral frameworks. And just to be clear, it's not in contradiction to say that no one gives a fuck about them, because I don't give a fuck about yours. You probably don't give a fuck about mine as a non-vegan, since I'm non-vegan. But what I don't like,
You're damn
right?
right about that.
Oh, yes, I'm damn right. I'm right all the time. Fuck off. So anyway, so just like I said
LOL.
before, LOL, fuck you. So anyway, like I said before, right?
I have
Simply
better taste in
because,
women, but
oh, okay. We know you're a virgin, but can you stop? All right. So
not really. But I guess it's a
done?
form of protection, Patty.
Are you done? Are you done?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So simply because I disagree with someone's moral beliefs does not mean that there's some objective idea about what those moral beliefs are. That's nonsense. Everyone's beliefs, you're certainly right that everyone's beliefs are built off of some like emotional thing, whether people are comfortable, whether they're not comfortable, right? Those things help build up our beliefs. They help build up what we're fine with. But also, because we relate morality to trauma, to things that deeply affect us, things that are quite egoist in nature, they look much different in the animal world. So, what you're doing, you're not just being dishonest, you're not just making loaded questions, you're now engaging in something called anthropomorphism, which is where we assign emotional ideas, mental states, and beliefs to that of non human animals.
Okay. So I'm just going to address the anthropomorphism part because everything else is peripheral red herrings and nonsense.
Wow, what a
So
great argument.
no, you did concede that morality has a lot to do with how we emotionally relate to
No
different
one said that they
situations.
don't. What I did say,
Okay,
just, oh my God. So again, you're being dishonest. Let me say
I'm
what I
not being
just said
dishonest.
again. Yeah, you are. Let me say what I just said
You don't
again.
give a damn. That's fine, but you
What
also
I said
understand that it
was,
relates to emotions.
what I said was, no one cares about your feelings. That doesn't mean that our emotions help build up our beliefs and our comforts.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But then when I was trying to build a case for veganism using how we emotionally relate to various situations, You were having a problem with that, and you
No,
dismissed
that's
that argument
how
right up.
you relate. No, that's how you relate to
I
situations. How
understand.
you
I
relate
understand. I'm just
is
stating. I'm
much
just stating.
different to how other people
Wait,
relate.
wait,
How I relate
wait.
is
You don't know
much
that.
different to how others
I know how
relate.
you relate because you have a vested interest in violating animals,
You
but I'm
actually
just
have no
feeling.
idea how I relate. You don't know what
No,
I
wait,
feel.
wait,
We
wait,
only
wait.
talk, just
Let
to be
me
clear,
finish.
when we talked,
See,
we
just
only
because
talked
you have
about
a vested
30 or
interest
so
in violating
minutes.
animals, that doesn't mean every non-vegan out there does not share my intuitions. Okay, many of the intuitions
Sorry,
could be intersubjective, and if I could make a case for why they should consider veganism, what is wrong with that? Why do you have a problem with that? You can say nobody
I
gives a
don't
damn, but
claim
you
to
don't know that
know.
for sure.
I don't claim
You
to
don't know
know
that for
what
sure.
I don't claim to know what other people are feeling. And I think the problem is just like
Exactly.
we
So
had this conversation,
don't try to invalidate my
just like
argument
we
just
had
by
this
saying
conversation
nobody gives
a
a damn.
couple of
You
days
don't know
ago,
that for sure.
just
Okay,
like we had this
When you
this
don't
isn't
conversation,
this
know
isn't
how others feel
working.
about
Hang on.
just like
Look, I said that I wouldn't chip in unless it was necessary. I feel that it's necessary. This isn't working because when you're both talking, nobody can hear either of you. It's just a standard thing. It's not even possible. So I think we're gonna have to like move this on to somebody else to see how it goes. That's not to blame either of you. You both
I no,
been doing
I
it.
want to
It's
finish. I want to finish, right? But I'm
you want to have the
sorry.
last word like a
Every time
petulant little
he
child.
talks,
Go.
you are welcome to also speak. But every time you talk, you add in some stupid straw man or some really like fucking delusional take about like how
No,
you know how everyone feels. That's
no, I
nonsense.
never said
And it
I know how
remains
everybody feels.
nonsense.
I'm just saying there is a possibility of somebody else sharing my intuitions as well, and I'm appealing to those listeners as to why they should consider veganism. You were the one making a blanket claim that nobody else cares about how you feel. Okay, so you were the
Just to
one
be
that were being
clear,
dishonest here.
you're arguing with me. You're not trying to argue to the
No,
audience.
I know
You are
I cannot
arguing with
convince you. I
me.
know you have vested interest in violating animals. Okay, I'm just here to put out
Why are
my
you
views, and
so
you're here to put out your views, and
why
it's just for
hold
the
on.
listeners to take what they
Why are
want.
you so
Okay, that's why
hell
I'm here.
bent?
see,
Why are you so
That's
hell
why
we're
bent
we're
to
here.
back at
convert?
it.
That's why
Like,
we're here.
okay, we're stopping, right? We're stopping with this line of questioning because this just looks ridiculous. And like I say, I'm not blaming either one of you. Like, you're both doing it. I know how it goes. I've done it a million times myself. We're gonna move on
No,
to
this is
another
why
speaker.
No, why I'm
SD. This
sorry,
is why I'm absolutely
why are you
willing.
so hell bent that you have to convert the
SD,
people you're
SD,
talking to, but not learn?
SD, SD. This is why I,
Yeah.
proposed the original rules where we would not interject with each other, but Patty wanted this to go her way, and this is how it will turn out. And I knew it. Last
Well,
time, I didn't expect it to be
I don't know
her
why
to
you
be this.
believe that you should be able to say stupid shit and just get away with it. I don't know why you're
You say
into
is
that.
stupid and it means to me. Okay, so why do you
I
think
don't
you
know
should
why
be
you're
getting
into
away with
that.
that? Why do you think you should
It
be able to get away with
okay, you
violating,
know what?
raping,
Fine.
murdering
That's
animals?
fine. I'm going see, and that's okay. There we go. So again, right? You
Why do you
seem the
think you should
most
be able to get away with
disingenuous.
raping, violating,
You
murdering
say
animals
you
and
are
not
welcome
have
to
any
call the
moral
police.
scrutiny over that?
You're welcome to call the police anytime. You think that you can say dishonest, disingenuous things. You think that you can attempt to bridge gaps that are not actually bridged and built, right? And you think that you should just be able to say that, take
There was a
conversations, and
time.
get away with them.
There was a time when slaves escaped, they
see
could
now,
be
now to be
reported
fair,
to the
you
police and
just
called back.
interrupted,
You remember that
so
time, Patty?
Sorry. Why would I? I'm
Laws are
sorry.
not
Are you
just.
okay.
trying to make
I'm
Laws are
getting
not
okay?
pissed
just.
because nobody's listening to me, and you
Are
asked
you
me to moderate this. So like,
Laws are not just, Patty.
beyond
Laws are not always just.
beyond making
are you trying to make a
suggestions,
racist
I have to
comment?
start clicking
I'm not making
buttons,
a
and I
racist
don't want to do
comment.
that.
How is this racist? I'm just saying laws are not always just. There was a time when if slaves escaped, they could be reported to the police and the police would bring them
Hold
back.
on.
Okay? Just
BSS. The
because
reason.
I cannot just because I cannot appeal to the law right now to push my moral case, that does not mean the law is just. Okay?
The
That
reason
does
I
not mean what you
asked.
do is justified. That does not mean
The,
what you do is justified
are
either.
you gonna
Okay?
repeat yourself again?
I'm
The
gonna address
reason
the
I
anthropomorphism argument. Do you want me to get there, or do you just want to play this petulant little game that you are
the
so adept at?
the reason I asked if you are trying to make a racist point is because
How is it
last week.
racist for me to
Okay.
illustrate how laws were always not just?
Yeah, now
So just
The
look,
because I
reason.
cannot report
hang
to the
on,
animals that are being
stop. Right?
violated,
To be fair, you've just done the same thing that you're accusing her of and complained, right? You've both done it, okay? It's not one side or the other. It's just generally bad. You're clashing. I know how it goes. I've done it a million times. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move on because, like I say, this is being recorded and it will be uploaded. I think the next person who wants to speak to you, VS, is Mr. Cuddles, Patty, you're more than welcome to stay to listen. Of course, that's never going to change. We need
I'm
to
willing
move
to
this
like.
on though.
Okay. I'm just seriously trying to
Can I
figure
address the
out like
anthropomorphism
why he
argument?
felt. I'm seriously trying to figure out why he felt that he needed to bring up slavery. He found out last week that I was black, right? And so now he's brought up slavery and said, "Do you remember that?" What was the point of saying that to a black woman?
Because you'll be able to relate to that much better when I can invoke something from your own personal life as to why laws are always not just. Okay? If
Your
somebody were to
personal
invoke
life.
a trauma, doesn't matter because I'm talking to you. If you're gonna
Was I
construe
a
that as
slave?
racist, I don't give a damn. Okay?
Have I ever been a slave in
That
1999,
does not matter. That
1995
does
when
not
I was
matter.
born? Right.
That does
So
not matter. I'm
bringing
sure
up
you've heard
slavery,
of the wrongs that
yes.
have been done to your people. Okay?
So
And I'm sure you can relate to that.
bringing up slavery is a point in which you are trying to antagonistically come after my ethnicity and not actually make a good point, correct?
Or rather, I was trying to illustrate how laws can be unjust. Okay? And just because you don't have the legal enforcement behind you enforcing true justice, that does not mean what you're doing is moral or immoral, right? That
Right.
is what I
I
meant. So just because
agree.
I cannot call the cops, just because I cannot call the cops and let them know that you're violating animals, you're raping and murdering them, that does not mean what you're doing is morally justified.
I don't know
That was
how
a
you
point I
came to
was
the
trying to illustrate.
conclusion. Great. I don't know how you came to the conclusion I'm raping animals. However, I'm trying to figure out
Non-veganism is
why
a
you
lifestyle that deems it okay
No, okay,
think.
look,
to violate
I'm
animals.
gonna have to stick with what I said. This isn't going
Okay.
anywhere. This is just being a shit show, and like I say, it's nobody's fault individually. It just happens. So, what we're gonna do, because VS is in the chair, we're gonna move on to Mr. Cuddles, who has a different name at the moment. Where the fuck is he? Oh yeah, there is. Right.
Esli, can I just address the anthropomorphism argument? Can I just give my response to that, and
Am
then we
I
can
going to
move
get to
to?
respond to that?
Well,
If
it
not,
wouldn't
then
be
you
Sure, you
can
can.
set that up.
fair. It wouldn't be fair for you to, say something that she can't respond to. So,
No, she can respond. We can just have like a closing statement since it's going nowhere. I can just
all
make my
right, all
response
right.
and see
Very
hers.
quick closing statements, and then I really
Sure,
will
sure.
start getting a bit like aggy about this. So yeah, go on. Quick closing
Okay.
statements, and that's fine. Wrap it up.
So this whole concept that we are anthropomorphizing animals assumes that these emotional states and these mental processes are exclusive to just humans. That is not true. Animals can feel pain, pleasure, well-being, suffering, and just like humans. And the states that are under consideration are by no means exclusive to humans. Concern for their loved ones, social hierarchy, bonding, seeking comfort, pleasure. None of this is exclusive to humans. They're common traits shared by all sentient beings. To limit, our moral consideration to just humans, that is a discriminatory behavior that results in so much suffering and evil, and it is morally no different than the Holocaust. This is much like someone saying only white Germans have certain morally worthy traits and Jews don't have them, and therefore it's okay to violate them and get rid of them. That is the same mentality that is being employed with the non-vegans to try and draw this arbitrary circle around their own species, which is used to violate those outside of that group. So
Okay,
I
are
don't
you
see the
done?
anthropomorphism argument as a just.
Is that the end of your closing statement?
Sure, Patty can give
Okay,
hers, and then we
that's
can move
fine.
to the other
That was
speakers.
roughly 30 seconds. I wasn't counting, but it seemed like about 30 seconds. Patty, you can have 30 seconds too, of course.
Great. So no one said that this doesn't mean that animals can't share states. It doesn't mean that humans are exclusive to certain states. I certainly think humans are exclusive to things like establishing things like Congress and law, or certainly exclusive to things like establishing gender and cultural norms, right? But that doesn't mean that animals can't share things such as having emotions, feeling, getting frustrated or angry. We know, for example, that horses and dogs get frustrated and maybe even upset. Dogs, however, don't feel things like guilt, unlike human beings. And it's questionable if a lot of other animals can feel those things too. So no one's questioning if they're able to do that because that's not what anthropomorphism is. Anthropomorphism is literally like the ability to assign emotional, the ability to like assign um, emotional states that have a lot more meaning than we think they do, than we like actually perceive them to. So, for example, right, and for example, families, right? we have nuclear families. Animals don't. We say things like mommy and daddy, where a lot of animals don't actually have like dads well in a part of their lives. In fact, dads are so separated a lot of times from babies for risks that they'll do things like eat them or kill them simply so that they can rebreed their
10
mom.
seconds.
Yep, I'm done.
You're done. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you both for that interesting exchange. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to move it over. I think Mr. Cuddles was definitely very keen to speak. I'm just going to find him. Right, I found him. Mr. Cuddles, your turn. You're alright with speaking with Mr. Cuddles, VS, I assume?
Yeah, I should be. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I just forgot to check if VS was okay with talking to you. I think
Fantastic.
he
Oh,
So,
probably
sorry. One more
is.
thing I gotta say.
No!
Eat dick, ESS.
okay, okay. If you mean somebody else, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I was saying that I think we definitely do need a breather to relax because a lot of things are kind of flying by. Um, yeah, a lot of things are flying by there, so I think we got to relax it a bit. So I think we can just sort of like reset a bit and sort of just start with like what the position is. I think VSJ, you think you're like basically a sort of like a contract theory person, right? Like a deontological contractualist. If so, that's necessary if I had to make some like possible points. And then there's also a second point regarding what you said regarding me, but that's a little later.
Hey, Cuddles. Yeah, I would say, uh, can you hear me?
You cut
I
out
can
a
hear you now.
little
You're
bit.
cutting out a bit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm more of a deontologist. Yes.
Okay, yeah, and again, I think you brought up Rawls, so it definitely seems to be a bit more contractualist. And again, it's not again, all theories have their critiques, and so I just sort of like conceptualize how you go through that because I would say a big aspect for contract theories is centered around like consent. And would you agree to that? That like a big part of like how they're determining morals is that like saying you wouldn't consent to this, you wouldn't give informed consent if you were in this situation. It's sort of that contract, that contractualist thinking. Would you say that's sort of accurate to your position, or?
Yes. In the absence of informed consent, I think um, we need to. The only time we are able to, we are justified in violating their dissent is when we take actions for their own well-being, like for instance taking them to the vet, getting them vaccinated, or getting them spayed and neutered, because not being spayed and neutered could result in health issues for animals. So these are the only circumstances under which I would say not having an informed consent to inflict a particular action on a sentient being is morally justified. In other cases, I would say in the absence of informed consent, we should not have any form of transaction of any kind of or any kind of exchange with them.
That would be interesting. Let me see. So in the absence of informed consent, we can do something. So that would almost be like a sort of like pluralistic view, because I think because typically they would say consent is more of a bit more of a first principle. But if you're saying in absence of that, there's sort of other considerations. That definitely seems to be a bit more pluralistic. So that's definitely one of those ways, and that's actually pretty good because it actually gets around certain questions, of course. Because the next question will obviously be, what about animals? Because animals can't really consent, so how would they happen? And in your case, you're saying that if they're not able to consent, that just like consider certain aspects of their welfare, which is sort of paternalistic outlook, I guess.
Right. More of a guardianship rather than ownership.
Okay, and what do you think is the extent of that guardianship per se? Like for example, if I can like if I'm like a guardian over a cow, would I can like as a
Mhm.
guardianship just take the milk from that the cow produces? Um, or
No,
because
that
it's
is
not.
where I mean, to deem it, I mean, to examine whether it is acceptable, morally acceptable to take the milk from the cow, we need to analogize the situation with, a trade equalized human, and then ask ourselves if it would be acceptable for us to do the same to the human. And we would say no, right? And at that point, the inconsistency in our guardianship, or the intuition when it comes to our guardianship becomes apparent. And I would say that, yeah, as per deontological principles, it would be it's required to be consistent, right? You're required to be consistent, and therefore it would be unacceptable to milk the cow. That would be my response to that.
So okay, I guess you're saying trait equalizability. So this would mean like if we're not okay with like milking humans, or I guess extracting breast milk from humans, we shouldn't be okay with doing it for cows. Just for clarity.
a trait equalized human who cannot give informed consent. So if there is a mentally challenged human female, we wouldn't, let's say there is a person who is her guardian, we wouldn't say that it's morally acceptable to get this mentally challenged person pregnant just so we could take her milk. We wouldn't say that, right? We would consider that abhorrent, exploitative, and unethical, because this woman cannot give informed consent. Therefore, to subject her body through 9 months of pregnancy just so we could, derive monetary or material benefit of any kind is unjust, right? That is what we would conclude in the human scenario. Even though the only thing different about this human and the cow is their species identity. So based on rules, for the consistency purpose, we could deem that if we wouldn't like this done to one of us, why are we doing it to somebody else who is not one of us? That is in no way different other than the fact that they're not one of us. That is how we arrive at why it's unethical to milk cows. Hello, can you hear me?
I don't hear Cuddles if he's responding. Cuddles.
My bad. I was hitting the wrong button. All
right, no worries.
So I was saying that, okay, so in a general sense, you're saying that, like, if we were so there's a few extra principles. There's consent, but there's also the extra principle that or duty, if you will, that if consent, for example, is a non-factor, then I guess the other thing takes over. And that's like a more of a trait equalization. So you would say that for all sentient creatures that exist, it has to be okay to do this to a human before it to be okay to do it with the animal. So, like, for example, say if it was okay to, like, draft humans to go to war, it would be okay then to draft, animals to go to war, something like that.
Basically, I don't think it is justified to draft someone into war if they're not a willing combatant. So I don't think animals should be involved either. You wouldn't for sure advocate drafting someone who is mentally handicapped, who cannot take informed decisions, who is at the cognitive levels of animals, to war, right? You would think that is immoral, that is counterproductive, and all that. So why are we doing it with animals, right? That would be my line of reasoning.
Yeah,
so
but
we're
operating if the society felt it was okay, would by extension would be okay this. But again, if you're saying that, for example, then that these things are wrong irregardless of the perspectives of a culture or society, that does sound a lot closer to like a realist position, which I guess was my next point. Was I was very confused when you said you're a subjectivist, when it seems that you're applying
no, I'm not a
principles.
Right, yeah. Right. So I'm not a subjectivist, but I'm just working through the framework that Patty laid out, and I was trying to illustrate inconsistencies or contradictions within her worldview. That is what I was trying, right? I wasn't necessarily making a case from realism, because if she does not subscribe to realism, there's no point in me choosing realism, right? So that's what I was trying to get at. I was operating from a subjective framework when I was discussing that, but even though deep down I derive my values and my intuitions from my realism, right? Like what I've chosen as the not normative basis and my metaethical basis. I even if my intuition does not align with that, I try to silence that intuition and base my actions or inform my actions based on the dictations of that normative ethic. That is what I would do. But since Patty was a subjectivist, or I don't know if she was exactly a subjectivist, she said she was a Christian, maybe she had more of an objectivist take. But I was trying to make her understand why it would be unfair of her or unprincipled of her to use moral relativism as a justification for what we do to animals when we wouldn't want certain things done to us based on somebody else's moral relativism. That was my
okay. So here's the thing, right? So I think you made an interesting point. You said that you derive your intuitions from your position of realism. So would you think then that if someone was an anti-realist, they might derive different intuitions based on their anti-realism?
Yeah, but then we still might share some common ground, that are intersubjective in nature, and based on that, I can try to reason with them by laying out my views and saying, "Hey, you're how I make the appeal that somebody is arbitrarily leaving out animals based on their, they might not be able to intuitively associate with the suffering of the animals." But then there are some animals they probably associate with more than the other. I could just ask questions like, what is the real difference? I can just appeal to their conscience and say, there is not much of a difference between your dog and the cow, and you're showing so much love and affection and concern for the well-being of this one animal, but then not the other. What is the difference?
Like,
I could ask.
You can always attempt to reach out, but it sounded like, again,
Yeah.
when we were talking with Patty, it sounded like you're making a bit stronger claim that it was by fact against her intuition, or by fact against, the anti-realist intuition, where it may be the case, and I guess maybe by certain cultural standards it may be more likely to be the case, but it also may not, right? Because again, we spoken yesterday, and I've told you that I watched Dominion, and I'm fully like, aware that pigs die and thing, but there's not really like any particular connection there. So if in the case that you cannot really get these appeals, or that these intuitions don't really connect, what do you do then? Are you just gonna like revert back to your own framework? Because I kind of want to get into that own framework a bit more. But
I mean, can you just repeat that part? Are you saying that if I cannot reach out to a person and convince them, what would I do? Is that your question?
yeah, because I'm saying, because the assumption there seems to be that they do have these values, so it seems to be almost like an assumption of like maybe a shared value. Like regardless of what we say
Right.
we value, there's really some deep down things in there that we tend to similarly value, maybe.
I mean, at that point, at that level, it's just what we've all been doing anyway, right? We all live our lives and try to achieve the ends that we deem worthy, and just work along those lines, right? I might just, okay, you said something like, you're not motivated enough to go vegan, even though you're fully aware of what happens to these animals. And I would simply, at that point, I can't do much in the world we live. All I can do is work with the governmental agencies, the lobbies, to change the laws to the point where, it becomes the social norm to be vegan, and to not be a vegan is looked down in the society, condemned, and at which point you will have the societal motivation to go vegan, right? These are the things that I can otherwise work on. So that is what I would focus on beyond a particular point. I can only
Exactly.
focus so much on the individual. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely discussed that yesterday. So okay, that the thing, and I think that was sort of the interesting point too, that Patty was sort of brushing on, is like, why are you speaking necessarily to convince and not to just generally inform? Because I think that's also a potentially big issue there too. Because it's like, because I
I
don't think
mean,
most people are unaware that animals are killed for food, right? I think most non-vegans are pretty aware of that, and it
no,
may
it's
be the
not
case
just
that
me.
some. Hmm?
No, I mean, I also know that plants are also killed for my food, but then there are, just because something is killed, that doesn't necessarily have to motivate someone, right? Like there are thought patterns that somebody might have not explored, thought experiments that somebody might have not explored, how they would feel if they were in that position, what kind of a world they would have wanted if they were in that position. These are questions they might have not explored. So there is still a possibility of convincing people who might have known facts but have not made that visceral connection to the situation that is at hand, right? And everybody's trying to convince the other person, right? Like Patty's trying to convince me
That
why
is an
vegans should
assumption.
not do that.
I would cut in and say I actually disagree. Because again, in this
No, no,
conversation,
let me,
neither yesterday
no,
nor
one second,
today,
one second.
I'm actually not trying to convince you to become a non-vegan. I'm actually
No, you're
trying
not
to
convincing
explain
me
to
to
you.
not become a non-vegan. No, you're not convincing me to become a non-vegan, but you're convincing me why you should be. You are a non-vegan, right? Like you should be allowed to be a non-vegan. Why I should not try to convince you. That is also a form of.
I'm not even trying to do that. If any, again, at most, I'm trying to like convince you, quote unquote, like you've got to use some hard quotes on that. Like it's mostly just like an informational thing of just like, this is what the position is, this is what the position entails, and trying to like explore that. I'm just trying to like find out about you, to be honest. Again, it's not really convincing you that it's okay. Obviously, you don't find it okay, or else you wouldn't be vegan. Because otherwise, you would just be non-vegan like everyone else and just say, yeah, if you want to eat all plants, it's fine. Um, so yeah, again, it's not that. I do think that activists tend to be focused on convincing. Well, activists and sophists. So I do think that because a lot of vegans do tend to be activists, they sort of like they approach these
Cuddles,
conversations through
cuddles,
this rhetorical lens. But I don't think that's necessarily
cuddles.
a
Can I
good
ask you a
goal for
question?
conviction. Yeah.
Cuddles, can I ask you a question? So you are a socialist, right? But you would try to convince the world to become socialist, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't really be trying to do that. I would mostly probably just join, like for me, I'd probably just join an organization that's already helping people. And that would kind of be good enough for me. I don't really need to try to convince people. There's already like organizations that I think are pretty doing at least trying to help people the best they can. And for me, activism would just entail doing that. I ask
No,
people about
but
their worldview to be curious,
Let's
but I'm
try
not really
to
convinced people
keep
to be
it
social.
on topic, guys. Like I know, like I
yeah,
get
yeah.
it
But
that
I'm just
these
trying
things
to.
can like branch off into other things. I understand that,
Yeah.
but like this is supposed to
No,
be
but I'm
strictly about veganism, and like we can't be
sure.
here
Sure.
all
No,
night.
no. I'm just.
So like
Oh, yeah, I understand.
how
I'm just
long?
making a
No, I'm
general
just.
Yeah,
point
no,
that
it's all good. It's not an issue. But like,
okay.
how long do you guys want to have an exchange for? Because there's at least one other. Well, I suspect there's more than one other person, but one I know for definite who wants to have a talk with VS. Not
Yeah,
trying, not trying to
again,
rush
no
you
problem.
guys. Like you can tag back in, in a bit or whatever. But
Exactly. So I would so I think we could we can if you definitely want we can make like a few maybe final closing points. I think
sure.
because I was just mainly just trying to calm it down because it was just kind of just a back and forth screaming match.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that like the purpose of every conversation, at least for me, has not really been trying to convince people, and I don't think that's necessarily the point of like most most conversations in general. But it could be. But I think it was more like a general notes as far as regarding certain frameworks and just certain things I sort of noticed. But that's fine. You could tag me out, and then I think Dread wanted to speak, so they can speak. So.
Yeah, Dread's up next.
Sure.
VS, do you want to have a little quick closing there?
Yeah. The way I see it, I don't see anything wrong with necessarily trying to convince a person of your worldview and having them on board, especially when we think that matter is so urgent that the life of every sentient being matters. How would we want the world to react if we were the one waiting in a kill line? How would we want the world to react if we were the ones having our women repeatedly impregnated just so somebody else could drink their milk and eat their babies? We would want the world to show an urgency in changing, right? So it's just a matter of consistency with that intuition or with that impulse that I would have for myself if I were in the shoes of the animal. So that is the reason why we think the world needs to change and be convinced of our worldview. Otherwise, we wouldn't care, right? I don't care what religion somebody follows as long as they don't impose their religious morals on me or other sentient beings. I don't care what political views someone holds unless their political views are extremely like that of Nazis. So I'm very liberal on those fronts, but I don't try to convince anybody on that. I really don't have much, ambitions in that regard. The only thing I feel this strongly about is vegan. Otherwise, I'm a pretty enterprising and chill person.
No problem. Thanks for the closings, both of you. Like I say, you can pick it up in a bit if nothing else happens. But I do know for certain that Dread Cassowary wants to speak. Are you okay with talking to Dread? VS?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Dread.
Yeah.
I'm gonna unmute you. Should we say like
Yes, yeah.
we don't have to put a strict time
I'll
limit
probably
on it? Yeah. What?
Yeah, I'll probably be around for another half an hour. But after that,
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak gets an actual chance. So, I don't know, Dread, probably a quick back and forth, right? Dread, I'm unmuting you right now. Check
Hey,
check your
me?
mic.
Can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Marvelous, marvelous. Okay, just so you know, I'm very much an objectivist, so I care about what's real. I'm not as fiery as Patty in regards, but I do believe that ultimately feelings are not ultimately important. What I care about is what's real. So I have a series of questions for you, VSS, if I may ask them.
sure.
Can I ask you what experience do you actually have with animal rearing, animal care, zoology in general?
I don't have any.
Okay, fair. And thank you for being honest. Um,
No, but animal rearing. Do you consider caring for rescue animals as part of animal rearing by any chance? No,
absolutely,
probably not.
sure, of course. I mean that
Okay.
that that is a animal.
Okay,
The
so in that case, I've cared for a few rescue puppies, foster puppies here and there.
okay,
Yeah.
so dogs, nothing like farm animals, nothing like exotics, nothing like that. Never worked at a zoo.
None,
Okay.
none.
Would you say that a zoologist or somebody who does more time and effort with more exotic and more difficult to deal with animals potentially has a better understanding of what animals are capable of, their mental capacity and their mental faculties than somebody with no experience?
I would have to think about that. Like, where are you going with that question?
Uh, 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 where I'm going with it is not ultimately important. It's, do you think that if somebody who does the study, does the research, goes to university, studies these animals on a deep anatomical level, which is what zoologists do, they also study their behavior, they also study their cognitive ability. Do you believe they have a better opinion about what these animals are capable of on a physical, on a even on a mental level than somebody with no experience whatsoever?
Sure, just like our doctor would know more about the human anatomy, and the
Of
or
course.
psychiatrist might know more about human emotions and psyche. I'm sure a geologist or a veterinarian, a zoologist or a veterinarian might know more about the animal.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna bring up a separate question. Do you think that there is any reasonable reason for a human to kill an animal?
Self-defense, like if you're in a village and if you see a tiger attacking you or something, or pouncing on you, in that case, I think self-defense is okay.
What about the circumstance of wild hogs?
See, with wild hogs, I think there are other ways to deal with it, right? Like we can.
You're
see
kind of
that
breaking
ultimately
up.
this was.
You're breaking up. Could you say that again?
Okay, just one sec. Let me.
Just do check.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were crackling
So I was
up,
just
and I
saying.
couldn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just saying that when it comes to wild hogs, this is ultimately like what would you do with invasive species? That is the question it comes down to, right?
Right.
See, the problem with dealing with invasive species is that we are a non-vegan world. Majority of the humans are non-vegans, so they don't value them enough to the point where they don't have any form of care ethics for dealing with these animals. They're okay with dispensing off, like treating them like commodities, like they don't matter,
Okay.
discarding them, killing them. Whereas in a vegan world, if the whole world was vegan, we would have a totally different approach towards dealing with these invasive species of animals, right? We would probably build better fences to the point where these animals cannot burrow in, or we would even work with less harmful means to deal with them, right? Like maybe there'd be more volunteers to reduce their reproductive capacities through administration of chemical contraceptions periodically, which will manage their populations to a point where they're not invasive and destructive to our properties. So
Okay.
ultimately, this is the reason why I hold that veganism is ultimately the answer, because it will change people's attitudes towards non-human sentient beings to the point where we are as the least harmful to them as possible, basically.
Okay. So, related to that, I appreciate the desire to do things that are as the least violent option, right? In regards to these
Right.
animals, because I'm not a fool. I know that pigs are very intelligent. They are nowhere near human intelligence, and I will dispute whether or not that they have human emotion. I think they have hog emotion, which is not something that we can actually understand because we're not hogs. But to obtain your vegan world, that would take time, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I think that's a fair thing to say. It's not going to something that happens overnight, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, although I would like to.
Well, I'm sure everyone wants their utopia right now. Okay, if we took the time to obtain your utopia, you are aware that wild hogs would annihilate several other species that live in that area, correct? The only way we prevent them from doing that is by hunting them because they reproduce out of control.
That's the point, right? Like we would have more volunteers to tranquilize them and administer chemical contraception, or maybe even perform castration on them, right? Like the males, they could be castrated. We could do things like that.
So
Again, it boils down to
this is why I brought up the zoology point. I don't think you understand how large and violent wild hogs are. They are human killers. They can and will
right,
kill humans. They can get up to 400 to 500 pounds. You can't just
right.
trank them and castrate them, and they have no predators. So, I guess my question is, do you value the species that are being destroyed by these animals, or do you value these animals that are just doing the destruction? Even if it is our fault that it happened, we have to make a decision based upon, do we allow the hogs to drive other species into extinction because we don't want to cause suffering? Or do we try to remedy our mistake? Because unfortunately, attempting to pen them in, it doesn't work. These are burrowing creatures. They
Okay.
can burrow right out of any fence we make. We can't gather them all together. They're too violent. They will kill us.
Quick thing,
Okay.
this is a big topic, and it's very much worth exploring, but this could turn into like an entire debate, and I appreciate that VS, I think you're a little bit short on time now, is that right?
No, I can respond to this question. I have a good analogy to
Yeah,
answer
it's,
this
it's
question,
just that
right?
I
Um,
think there's at least a couple of other people who wanted to speak.
Sure.
That's the only thing.
Yeah. Let me just quickly answer this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so ultimately, species identity itself does not hold any moral worth. It's the individuals of the species that matter. So we currently don't have any means to reduce wildlife suffering, right? We're not even okay. I think it's a topic that I would probably like to have with vegans, because when somebody is not, I don't mean this as an ad hom to discount the non-vegan position by saying, hey, you're not this person, therefore there's no point in having this conversation. I don't want to make it sound like, hey, you're not a woman, therefore you should not talk about abortion. I'm not doing that. But it does feel a little, what do you say, uncomfortable to discuss such gray areas when it comes to animal ethics and animal rights, when people are not clear as to what black and white is. Like when you can agree with. No, let me just finish my point. Like,
don't interrupt him, Dread. Dread, don't interrupt him, please.
Okay.
Yeah. When when we can agree, when we can see eye to eye on the fact that it is, on the what do you say, on the idea that it is immoral to stab a cow for a burger, or to breed billions of pigs into existence just so we want to eat their bellies. At that point, we can discuss this, right? Like, I think that at that point we will both have the genuine interest of animals in mind, and then we can discuss this, right? And also, let me just give you an example. Right? Humans are extremely invasive species themselves, right? Like, we originated in Africa, but then we've colonized literally every other continent. We have driven so many other species to extinction.
True.
We wouldn't apply this logic on ourselves, would we? So I think it feels a little disingenuous to use this logic on wild hogs, when if at all they are so violent, it's so difficult to gather them into this thing. I think once we have a vegan world, you will be shocked to see the willpower of these vegans. They will go to any extent to prevent the suffering of animals. They will risk their lives to catch them.
We'll need to wrap this one up, right? I just need to make a quick announcement. It's not conversation over, but I know you want to respond, Dredd. I get it, right? But I have to moderate this fairly, right? Quick announcement, if anybody else wants to speak to VS, he doesn't have too much time left, so if anybody else wants to, either DM me or just put it in VC text, say I'd like to speak. There's other people who've already been talking that want to tag back in. What have you got left, VS? Like 15 minutes or something, I guess, is it? VS?
SD, I love you, bro, but you gotta let me respond.
Yeah, well, the trouble is, I've got to stop you at some point, because otherwise it's going to go on forever. Like, VS...
So we can have a closing statement. Brett can have a closing statement on that, and we can move to next speaker.
Yeah, but how long have you got left, VS?
Another 16 minutes. Another 16 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so you can have like 2 minutes each, together, and then we're going to have to move on to somebody else.
Well, he's already had his closing statement, so I'm just going to make mine and move
on.
Sure,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sure.
First things first, I do appreciate that you are coming from this position from a deep state of personal feelings on the topic. However, you did concede that you actually have no idea how these animals act, how these animals feel. You have no actual education about how animals behave. You're doing this entirely on the basis of what you have read. And unfortunately, what you have read is not the actual science of the matter. And I believe that if you took the time and maybe actually went and got a zoology degree, maybe actually learned about these animals, you would learn that they are far less human than you think they are. Quite simply, I understand that you are willing to convey human rights and feelings onto these animals. However, these animals are not willing to do the same for us. We are also the only species on the planet that cares ultimately about the well being of these animals. No other predator on the planet gives a shit about their comfort. We do. We are literally the only ones that do. I strongly suggest you go and actually, educate yourself, because you're coming out as extremely ignorant. Have a great day.
Excellent.
Okay, I need to respond to that.
See, this is the problem if I don't moderate, because you're going to respond and then he's going to want to respond.
No, but that was a lot of accusation, right? I was making my responses in a very non-judgmental way. I was just trying to deal with the facts, the questions, and my best approach to what I believe is the best solution to the problems. But the closing statement was a little, attacking of me, and I need to respond to that. Only then it would be fair. Just 30 seconds, right?
Sure, 30 seconds, and that's it, because humanity wants to go next.
Sure. So I don't need to know these animals at such a personal level to understand that breeding them by the billions and violating them for our benefit is immoral. If they cannot understand our social contracts and if they cannot reciprocate them, then we should simply not be breeding them into existence. not use that as a justification to breed more of them, create the problem, and then say, hey, they cannot understand our rights, our contracts, our moral contracts, or whatever, and abide by our rules. Therefore, it's okay to kill them. No, that is disingenuous. Okay, just like I don't have to get a medical degree to understand that humans ought not to be raped and violated and murdered. I don't need to get a zoology degree to understand that animals ought not to be raped, violated, and murdered. That's pretty much it.
Okay, cool, great. Thank you for the response. Are you willing to have a little chat with humanity? I don't know who this person is. I don't know what they think.
Sure.
Right, I'm gonna unmute humanity. Now, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Hey there, can you hear me well?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this is, I don't want to direct this too much at VSS. I mean, to be honest, I clocked out of this voice chat after the debate with Patty just got a little too much for me. But I want to have just a brief discussion, because my phone's about to die anyway. I'm at like 7%. But I want to make a note about how the objective morality argument is just killing veganism. It's like turning veganism into a fucking religion. And it's so annoying because I haven't been religious in like 10 years. I'm not going to start back anytime soon. And when you start telling people that everyone has a moral imperative to be vegan, it just falls on deaf ears. I mean, for anybody who recognizes that morality is subjective, it doesn't work. And for most people who do recognize morality as objective, they're Christians who have a Bible that tells them they can eat animals. So it doesn't work. You know, this is the thing, right? I'm a vegan. You know, me and VSS are on the same team as far as that goes. I want to end animal exploitation. I want animal liberation, basically. But here's the thing. We have to go at this by showing that most people, even though morality is subjective, most people have a moral framework that, when we analyze it and when we break it down, is probably inconsistent with veganism. Or is probably inconsistent in how they apply it, and therefore veganism would be more consistent with their actual moral values.
Okay, so hey, I did take that approach, right? That's why I was appealing to Patty's individual moral framework, and I asked how she would feel about it. I wasn't actually saying, hey, morality is objective, you ought to go vegan. I never said that. Yeah, I am a moral realist, and I believe that certain actions are objectively moral or immoral, but I never used that as the reasoning as to why somebody else ought to go vegan.
And that's why I don't want to direct this too much at you. It's just
Sure.
It sounded like that at first, and it's something that in the animal rights advocate server, I deal with this all the time. Like, I deal with it all the time, where vegans are trying to. It's so sad to me because I think they get to this position because they feel like they have to believe morality is objective in order to convince people to go vegan. It's like, no. As a matter of fact, it might work the opposite.
No, but also humanity. Here's the thing, right? Like, even though morality is subjective, but we are also able to form universal perspectives, right? And that is why I gave the John Rawls' original position thought experiment.
The original position thing, that's good. That's good stuff, because that is something I would bring up to anybody as far as like how much moral consideration we should give to animals. Now, I don't know your position on this, but let me ask you, do you think that animals should be equal under the law to people? Like, they should have the same moral consideration as humans. What do you think about that?
I don't think, I mean, what do you mean by equal here? Are you talking about same set of rights, or I would demand equality under the law when it comes to negative rights alone, right? Like, right now.
So that is what I'm talking about, basically. I don't see how we can give negative rights to all animals when, in order to feed our population, we have to kill animals just to make the crops. I'm not talking about, the animal factory farms. Fuck the factory farms. We don't need those, but we do need our crops. Right. Yeah.
No, but humanity, right? So the problem is we live in a non-vegan world, right? And the farmers themselves are non-vegans, so they're not going to give a damn about rodents or deers that might find themselves in a crop field, right? When they're harvesting, they're not going to give a damn. But
All right. Okay.
once the world goes vegan, everybody is going to do the best they can to harm as few animals as possible in the ways they interact with animals. This would mean a pharmaceutical scientist who is vegan is going to come up with ways that don't involve animal testing. This would mean a farmer who does crop harvesting comes up with harvesting technology or demands harvesting technology that does not involve harming animals. This would
Okay.
mean someone who's in the industry of managing pesticides will manage repellents
All
instead
right,
of
all right, that's
pesticides.
all right. Fair enough point with my battery dying. I will just bring up this then. What about roads? Like we're running over animals everywhere we go. We still need roads.
Yeah,
You know,
so we can
do you have an
build
objection
maybe
to roads? My question. Yeah.
yeah, so we can build in a vegan world. People would be motivated enough to build like a bridge or something, flyover or something for these animals, like we see in some of these picturesque Nordic countries, where they have
Yeah.
passovers for these animals to.
This is what I
Around
mean.
like
Okay,
wild
so
places, you could just build like a fence around roads.
Wait,
all right,
wait,
this
wait.
this is
Stop.
why
Don't
I
interject.
bring up
Crossing
roads.
the
All right,
animals.
like you're saying that animals should have the same negative rights as humans, right? That's your position.
In
They
a
should have the same
in
negative
an,
rights as humans.
in an ideal vegan world, once we are able to fully veganize the world, we should be able to give that. But we should be working towards that until that point.
Okay. I'm all about working towards that, but it's just so if they have the same negative rights to me, that would mean that in this ideal world, if a bug flies across my windshield, I think I should be like filed for manslaughter, you know, because
Not
a
really.
bug hit my windshield. No.
So let's say you're driving a car, and if a drunk bum just falls in front of your car, wants to commit suicide and just jumps in front of your car, you're not going to be charged with manslaughter, are you? Yeah, you might be
I
investigated,
guess
but
if it commits
that's not.
suicide with my car, but like if I accidentally run over a bum, you know, check. I might be wrong on this, but I think if
No,
I
if
just
somebody,
accidentally hit someone, I could be charged with manslaughter, even if I'm, you
no,
know, trying to do the right
if
thing.
somebody, no, but if somebody, you had no chance to react, and if somebody just comes and falls right in front of you, I don't think you should be charged in the legal system. I don't think that is sensible. So likewise, if a bug gets squashed by your windshield while you're driving a car, I don't think you should be held responsible
Well,
for that.
regardless of what you think, I think in practice we do charge people if they accidentally are responsible for the death of someone. We have to do that just for the sake of compensating the families. You know, we have to financially compensate these families who have lost a loved one, and that's one of
Sure,
the ways that we do it. Yeah.
but the family of the bug is not reliant on any financial compensation, so we don't have to worry about that here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the time I got before my phone is on 2%. So thank you for your time.
No worries. Thank
Thank you.
you for your question and your participation. Right, VS, you've got what, 6 minutes left? Does anybody want to go
Yeah,
next?
so that,
Just ping me. We'll get you unmuted. I know that Paddy wanted to have another go. I suspect Conan wants to have a go. I think there's probably a couple of other people who wants to have a go.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mr. Cuddles wants to have another go, but he hasn't got long left. Go on, one quick one. Don't turn it into a shit show, please.
VSS, are you an objectivist or subjectivist?
I'm more of a moral absolutist.
So, okay. Would that be more in line with objectivism to you?
I need to look into the exact definition of what entails objectivism, but when I looked at absolutism, that resonated with me more than when I've tried to deal with the word objective.
Okay.
I mean, you could say that if you say objective, do you mean that morality is mind external? Is human mind external? Is that what you mean?
It seems so. If something is intrinsically right, well, if you're making an argument, okay, I think I see the problem. If you're making the argument that it seems intrinsically wrong with you, you feel wrong about it no matter what, and that's something that is a part of you, right? And therefore, because it's a part of you and may not necessarily be a part of others in the same way, but you accept
No,
that others are different, then I guess that would be saying that you are a subjectivist who has like these beliefs about moral absolutism.
Yeah, so I think that would be. I would say that I understand that people have different intuitions and different subjective notions of what is right and wrong. But I'm just saying that if we want to have a productive discussion or discourse on morality, we should accept that certain tactics, like resorting to subjectivity of morals and relativistic nature of morals, cannot be used as justifications for certain actions. And therefore, let's have a ground rule set that way, which will lead to an absolutist perspective as to what constitutes, moral right and wrong. For instance, I gave you the example of, somebody choosing to use relativism as an excuse to violate someone close to you. You wouldn't find that justified. So I think if that rule, or if you think somebody should not use relativism as a justification to violate someone close to you, then you should also hold on to that rule, right? Rules cannot just apply arbitrarily to someone else,
No,
but not to you.
I don't think people should just hold on to rules that they don't believe in, nor do they accept. So things can be justified to them, and it can even be justified to others, doesn't mean they agree with them. For example, someone can find justification to kill someone they don't like just because I disagree with them, right? I disagree with them, but that doesn't mean if they were to logic their way through that like it's suddenly not justified simply because I don't like it. It may not be
No,
justified to me.
okay. In that case, I
May
can go
make
into
the world a
hypotheticals.
lot worse because they engage in that behavior, but that doesn't mean that it is like what I fear is that when you've talked to me and you've talked to Cuddles, because we've been discussing this, right, is that you flip-flop back and forth between subjectivism and objectivism, and you told Cuddles that you were an objectivist, but now you're arguing that you're
No,
subjectivist, and last week you
once again,
argued
Patty,
you're subjectivist.
that's a misrepresentation, right? I've always told that I hold some absolutist views for sure. I am
I
not
accept that.
exactly convinced I'm an objectivist,
Okay.
because I'm not comfortable with it, right? Let me just put it this way: I'm not
Okay.
entirely comfortable with the idea of objectivism. I've called myself an objectivist in the past. Okay, I've called myself a realist for sure, moral
Okay.
realist, but I've called myself an objectivist in the past. But then I've been thinking about it. It doesn't. Even if I subscribe to some mind external source, the very nature of the fact that morality has to be conceived by someone, a mind, makes it subjective, because your
Okay.
biases are going to creep in. Your biases are going to creep in. So I'm not entirely comfortable calling myself an objectivist, but I'm a moral objectivist. But I do call myself a moral realist and an absolutist. Okay, so I can only describe myself in ways that I feel comfortable doing so.
Okay, but that
And
seems like saying more realist
no, and
seems like
here's
a
the thing.
contradiction. I think
And
you should just
one more
drop
thing.
that.
No, one more thing, right? Like, I'm not imposing my objective views on anyone. I'm just trying to,
That's not true.
no, wait. I'm just trying to um, find contradictions within people's subjective frameworks and let them know they're inconsistent. And therefore, there is a maybe we have some shared intuitions. You can refer to these intuitions and you can come to the conclusion that, hey, this is a better moral framework. And that's how I'm trying to get people to go.
Okay, but that's not true. That you don't believe in imposing. Just to be clear, you just said your objective framework. That you're not into. You really need to drop the word like objective from your vocabulary. Period. Like that's where I think you're at. Is that and this is
I'll
what's
think
really
about it.
frustrating me. This is what has frustrated me with you. Is that when I talked to you, you were arguing. You were trying to argue to me. Yes, last week, in a subjective manner, because I told you and you knew from the get-go that I argue subjectively. Doesn't matter what my personal beliefs are, right? Well, no, it does matter what my personal beliefs are. That's not true. It matters what my personal beliefs are, but I'm not going to sit here and try to like Christian my way through this. Okay? So you knew that, and I think that you tried to do that last week. But what ended up happening was that you ended up arguing between objectivism and subjectivism, and it just frustrates the fuck out of people, just like it does now, which infuriated me that you kept what your real position was and didn't actually tell me what you actually were thinking and what was actually going on behind your head. Does that make sense?
I understand why you might be frustrated, but I'm here to tell you that I'm here to show internal contradictions in your personal worldview. So I'm going to invoke moral subjectivity that you hold on to. Okay,
Last week
because
you
I
didn't
cannot
find it.
make.
Mhm.
Wait, because I cannot make you to subscribe to my realist positions. I cannot force you to do that. So the next best thing I can do is try and get you to see contradictions within your worldview, where you hold certain moral intuitions and you have certain moral axioms in place from which you have built a worldview. I can only show that based on those values, your own worldviews are inconsistent. If
Wait,
that does not
so
make
last week,
if I could quickly cut it, since I'm apparently recently imbibed
okay,
now.
and when it comes to last week, right? One second. When it comes to last week, I didn't know exactly how to deal with you, and I gave a hypothetical, like just a case, the island case, and you gave an answer that I was not expecting. So I can change the hypothetical to illustrate your inconsistencies better. What's wrong with
Well,
that?
yeah,
People
Okay,
can
I'm saying
change hypotheticals.
cut in,
that's the
because
problem.
this is getting to the point where I kind
Sorry,
of wanted
I
to
just
avoid.
gotta
So
say it real
I
quick,
would say the
Cuddles.
issue is that
Okay.
when it came to, like, this is a very specific point. It's not even a big deal, but I was saying that
Yes,
when it came to saying that, oh, you know, because you mentioned that Cuddles and Zoom were sort of like crafting a moral system to go against our intuitions. So it seems like when you said our intuitions, it wasn't necessarily based on our moral framework. So it seems like even if you're trying to maybe engage in subjectivity, it seems that your current moral axiom seems to at least implicitly be imposed in there, because it seems to be assumed from the get-go that there's moral values that we have that that at least to my knowledge, maybe to Patty's knowledge, we just don't have. So I think that's
yes,
maybe where the issue, where the realism is beginning to show its head, is that the assumption there is that we all have these values, regardless of, even if we say we don't, right? So if I say that, I just don't care about animals, even if I watch Dominion, even if I fully recognize they're sentient, there may
No,
just be an implicit assumption in there that I just don't anyway.
no,
yes.
but
Do you understand?
Cuddles, I do understand that you don't care about animals, but I'm just saying you care about your loved ones. You wouldn't want somebody else violating them. Why do you think such rules exist? And why can't you follow the same rules? Why aren't you
That's not
following
a
the same rules? Why
rule.
do you think people
That's
are
not a
violating
Again, that's
those?
not a rule. That's just a
I
bias
mean,
I
a
have. I
principle,
am
a
biased
principle,
towards my
like an
family. I'm
idea.
not biased towards animals.
Yeah, see,
Right,
this
right.
is
An idea,
but this is
Yeah.
what this
right?
is the problem, right? Is like you have this I get it that you have this intrinsic belief that everyone deep down really like is thinking like you or something, but that's just not the way that this works. And it's very
No,
frustrating. So
I
like for
understand that.
example, just hold on. For example, last week, right? You said you didn't know how to deal with me. I accept that you did it. It was very clear. And last week, right? You gave me this hypothetical, and this was the other problem, was that when you have something that you know is nonsense, you choose to not just change it. It's acceptable to me anyway. You may not, it may be other people that aren't accepting of this.
One second.
If you hold on,
Let me respond to that. Let
just
me
hold on,
respond to that.
just wait.
No, I'm out of
If you
time. I'm
find
like 4 minutes out of time.
okay,
Yeah,
Let me just give a
we're
quick.
getting
okay.
back into the like the kind of
It's okay.
nonsense thing.
He's yeah, he's got to leave soon, so I'll just let him.
Yeah. So last week, what happened was I gave you a hypothetical, and you tactfully, what do you say? You derailed the hypothetical by not addressing the double standard that I was trying to illustrate.
No,
You were just
that's
saying
not
that
true.
I would hire the human. I would hire the human. That was not the question. The point I was trying to get at is when you wouldn't kill the human, why do you choose to kill the animal? That is the point I was trying to illustrate. And the hypothetical I presented was not the best of hypotheticals. Okay.
Well,
And I can
well,
always change the hypothetical to
yes, but
illustrate the double
VSS,
standard.
that's not true. You can listen to the recording. What you asked, this is verbatim what you asked, because I have it written down because I'm petty, is that you said, if you were on a desert island and there was one plant and one human, would you eat the human? And I respond to you and I said, yeah. I said, oh no, I said, depends, literally verbatim.
Depends.
And you
Yeah.
said yes. And you got upset and called me a moral lunatic. And I said, well, you didn't tell me what this plant was. You said it didn't matter because you would eat the 50 calories. And I said, no, I would eat 500 calories over the 50. And you said, okay, I'm changing my hypothetical. The hypothetical is now there are 80,000 plants and this one human, would you eat the human? I said, I would recruit the human because I don't know where you thought that I should respond to force dichotomies like this. And I said, I would recruit the
But you
human.
gave me a
And then
false dichotomy
no,
yourself later.
one second. And I accept that I did. And I also accepted your answer at the end, didn't I? Hold on. So what you said next was, now I changed the human into a cow. And I said, oh, well, I would build a plow, put the plow on the cow, do agriculture, and we can both eat. And I asked you explicitly, is that exploitive? You said yes because you wouldn't do it to a human. And I said, but I said that I would recruit the human. And then I said, is that also exploitive? And you bit that bullet and said yes. Now I think the problem was you were too busy going back and forth between frameworks you wanted to make up and frameworks that you actually believed in, which is very frustrating.
No, here's a counter to that. Okay, the
Anyone can
reason why
listen
I
to the
said it's
recording.
wait, I know what I said, and you've not misrepresented me here. What I'm trying to say is, when I said it is exploitative to recruit the human that way, I understood that. I kind of like felt you were going to force the human to plow the field, just like you would force the cow by whipping and or the bull by whipping and lashing, and that I thought was akin to slavery,
But
and
who
therefore I
said I was
said
whipping and
it is
lashing the bull?
exploitative.
But who said
I'm sorry, what was
this?
that?
And okay, here's another
And how else
problem,
do you get
right?
a bull? How else would you get a cow or a bull to plow the field for you?
Some cows and bulls naturally pull, including draft horses, and I can give you evidence for that. Hold on. So here's
But
another
still, I wouldn't
problem.
use them for labor, right? I wouldn't
I
use them to
I
my task,
accept
to
I
benefit me.
accept that you
No, but
wouldn't.
that's a
But
see,
hold on,
Patty. Here's the thing,
BS.
right?
Just wait.
Why
Just
can't I
wait.
change
Wait,
hypotheticals?
look, hang on.
No, why can't I change hypotheticals? I can
I
change
believe that you
hypotheticals
can
to
change
try and illustrate.
hypotheticals.
Yeah,
You
you can if you
I
let
can or
people change their
cannot.
answers, right? That's fine. But
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we don't run out of time, because like you needed to go
Sure.
or something.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, basically what I wanted to
So
say is
hold on,
I
wait.
can refine the hypothetical until I get to illustrate the double standard. That is my point.
You
There
can
is nothing against it
you
logically
can.
speaking.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, but VSS, I never had a problem. You can see in the recording, I never had a problem with you making
Okay.
or changing hypotheticals. In fact, I encouraged you to change hypotheticals. I also encouraged you to change definitions to ways in which did not make you look nonsensical. So just hold on. This is another problem, right? Is that when I said I would put a plow on the cow, you immediately thought she's going to whip the fuck out of this cow. And I said, and I was, and
Even
my immediate thought was just hold on. My immediate thought was, that's nonsense because I know as a farmer and someone who studies animal behavior that there are some animals who are genetically wired. It is like intrinsic to them that if something's attached to their back, they're going to pull that fucker across the field. And they don't care like what's behind them, what's in front of them. They're going to fucking pull. That's how
well,
some animals
that's
have
because
been.
we domesticated them. That's because we
Just
domesticated them, and
BSS.
we,
You got to calm down.
you know,
Okay, you got to calm down. Everyone in
no,
this
I
room
need to
knows.
leave and I need to close it up,
Okay,
right? Like
it's
that's
okay.
because we.
It's fine. If you have to leave, that's fine. But I would like to finish what I'm saying. Do you feel like you need to respond to this?
Yeah, that's because we have developed a system of domestication of them, which is exploitative to begin with, and which is the reason why they have this instinct to pull. Okay, just because
but
our
no one
golden
here
retrievers have a
disagrees. No one here disagrees that these
no, no, no,
animals are domesticated. Not a single person here disagrees with that.
no, and that is exploitative to begin with. So I wouldn't want to perpetuate this domestication, which is an exploitative practice, by
Yes, but
further
that's not
making
in
them
line with
pull.
the hypothetical VSS. It's not in line with the hypothetical. The
That's the point.
hypothetical,
The hypothetical that I initially gave was not very well refined. I was just trying to identify an inconsistency to
of
see what
course, but
your
I'm
views
trying
were,
to.
and I can
I'm
go on refining it even further. Okay,
of
I can do
course,
that forever.
of
All
course,
right,
but
Right.
I am trying.
everybody keep calm.
We're calm. We're calm. What I'm trying to get was there. Uh, I'm trying to get across to you big problems and which leads to why I was so frustrated with you earlier is that number one, you make inferences which are not there. Number one, the inference of she's going to put a plow in the cow, that means she's going to whip the fuck out of that cow. That's an inference that has not been
So
even that's an inference not
even otherwise, it is still
oh my
exploitative.
gosh.
Even otherwise, it's still exploitative. The very fact that
There's no way that like
I'll say just let Patty finish, and then we can let you have your time.
so can you unmute him, please? I don't want him to leave unless he has to. So
He's not muted. That's just him muting his
Oh.
own mic while he's not talking. That's all.
okay.
I did do a very brief server mute just to like so Patty can.
Oh,
like,
you did?
continue.
Okay, my apologies then.
Just so Patty can just continue, so it can just be over quicker.
So for
please wrap it
example,
up in 30 seconds.
yes, the inference of she's putting the plow in the cow, that means she's going to whip the fuck out of the cow. And then you automatically inference that she's recruiting the human. That means she's trying to like, she's beating this fucking human in the head to make them do work. She's making a fucking slave. I think that that's dishonest. I think that there's something blatantly dishonest that instead of just exploring, you're too busy trying to like, I don't know, trying to one up, trying to you as you say convince the crowd instead of having a conversation in good faith of understanding the position. And that's a problem. When I said earlier, right, we have like vegans have pets last week. you immediately went to, yeah, and these breeders are like breeding these fucking animals when, like, I mean, like, a great deal of pets are like mixed breeds that are straight up like strays. So, like, I just, you come up, like, this is why I was so
Okay, so let me
irritated
respond.
earlier.
More than 30 seconds, please. Can I just respond? Okay, so regardless of whether you whip the bull or you just let them pull, it doesn't matter. It is still exploitative. It just perpetuates their domestication, and it perpetuates the purpose under which these animals were enslaved by humans and made to be our, domestic servants without them being able to give informed consents to this kind of behavior. So, regardless of whether you were to whip them or not, I would still consider that exploitative and unethical. And so when I was trade equalizing, and when I was going to ask you the same, and if you were to say you would just recruit the human, so my mind automatically went to the fact that you would force the human to do this kind of work, and therefore I said it was unethical. Okay, there is nothing about me drawing inferences that are not there, because I just drew the same inference that I drew in the case of the bull, because the situations were trade equalized. Okay, that was a point I was trying to illustrate there. But I think that's a genuine misunderstanding amongst both of us. Okay, yeah, maybe you could contract the human to do your plumbing. Wait, I'm not done. And then when it came to pet ownership, I think in the vegan circles, in the vegan parlance, if you say pet, it usually means an animal that you have acquired through a breeder. Okay, so my mind automatically
No.
went to that. Wait. My mind automatically went to that, and therefore I assumed it was unethical. Or, I mean, I operated from the framework that it was unethical. If you were to say just a rescue or a stray animal, we would just say companion animals. That's the kind of wordings we use. Okay, so it just took my mind to a totally different direction when you gave the example of pet ownership. So that's the reason why I started off from the perspective that it is unethical.
I don't believe that when you heard me say vegan, see, I don't believe that you lack so deeply in the English language and you have such a lack of a deep and meaningful understanding of the English language that when I said a vegan gets a pet, that you thought there's this fucked up vegan that's going to a breeder to buy an animal. I don't
Yeah, there
believe
are
that's
lots
what
of
you
fucked
thought.
up vegans who do a lot of fucked up shit, right? Like there are vegans who feed carnivorous. I mean, they're carnivorous pets. They kill other animals. They incentivize that and they feed it, which is against the principles or
So you
ethics of
thought
veganism,
that you
right?
thought
So
that as wait, just to be clear, you interrupted me. So you thought as best case that Patty is going to bring up the worst of the worst vegan and not the best example of a vegan getting a pet. You thought Patty was
no,
going to
because
pick the worst of the worst?
no, you could have used companion animal. You could have used words like that. At which point I would have understood things better. Okay, and now that you clarified it, I could still I tried to answer things from that perspective where I talked about the difference between consent and informed consent, how it is acceptable for us to
Is
violate
it
the consent of
incumbent
animals.
upon Patty to make things as clear as possible for you, or is it incumbent upon you to ask questions if you feel that something's
And
not
we
clear?
did clarify that, and we were able to have a further
I
conversation on
clarified on
that.
my own
I did not.
volition, not because you
That's
asked.
okay, and we were able to make a we were able to have a further conversation on that because of that. Okay, misunderstandings happen. I don't know why you're so offended at me drawing inferences that are not
I
there.
am
When
not offended.
I have
I am
explained to you,
very
Misunderstandings do indeed happen. That's a thing. So VS,
so we were able to
I,
resolve that, and we were able to
sorry.
move past that. But if you were
Sure.
to attribute
Absolutely.
bad faith to me based on that, that's unfair. I would say I could attribute a lot of bad faith to you based on the tactics you pulled today.
Look,
Oh, you can attribute as much.
it wasn't a criticism, right?
But yes,
I just want to
Anyway,
make
anyway,
sure
anyways,
that
anyways,
you get this wrapped up on time,
anyway, it's 15
which
minutes.
you're
15 minutes
already
more than my.
15 minutes late, so I do
okay,
understand that.
he's late to something.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure, VS, are you happy with the way that the room went? Because I think everything's been quite fair. There was a bit of, a debacle at the beginning, but you weren't mistreated in any
I mean,
way. You're quite happy, I think. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here, would you?
I wasn't happy, but I felt it was a level playing field because I
Yeah.
wasn't muted like I was last. So it was a level.
Via
I would have wanted a more productive discussion where we were not interjecting each other and
Yeah.
we
That's
progressed with the
fine.
discussion. I would have.
Yeah, that's
yes,
fine. Because
I'll say this
what
out
I
loud.
predict is, like, I think because of this discussion, I think there's going to be more people who want to like have a 1v1 with you in the future to explore
Right,
your
you mean?
own positions. Yeah, there's going to be quite a few. Like, I mean, like I've got plenty of
Sure.
DMs about this.
And Conan, at the very least, wants a more engaged conversation later.
Yeah, I
Um,
just want to make sure that he doesn't feel that he was mistreated or that there was some bias or some other.
I did my
stuff,
absolute
so.
best to make sure. Like again,
Cuddles did
if
a
I
really
made you
good
feel
job.
uncomfortable, yeah, but if I made you feel uncomfortable,
Like I said, it
definitely
was a level playing field for sure. It was a level playing field for sure.
yeah, and I think, and I know how you feel. I think you definitely do want people to be consistent with normative ethics, and that's fine. But I would just say that I definitely think we should definitely analyze our meta ethics to make sure we're consistent with that too, right? Because if we're constantly waffling between subjectivism and objectivism, at the very least that'll be confusing. So definitely to avoid frustration,
No,
we can definitely discuss that.
Cuddles, he
but
has to
Cuddles, I
go.
understand that. But
No, I'll say that's a general,
that,
like a general note. I was just like final point.
that's fine. That's fine. But if you were scrutinizing my views on that, in that point, you can demand that, right? In that case, you can demand that. But if I'm scrutinizing your views and trying to identify contradictions in your view, it doesn't matter if I resort to operate in your framework.
Yeah, definitely go for it. Again, later on when you have time, if you actually want to critique my framework, go for it. Right? I definitely want to get the challenge so I can like research my views a little more. That's no issues.
Superb. I want to thank VSSJ for turning up and allowing us to host this discussion. That was it was interesting. Bit of a back and forth and a little bit spicy at times, but thanks for turning up when you said you would. I don't think it was too bad. Yeah, excellent. You're welcome here anytime.
Can I say this just real quick?
Thank you.
I'm willing to have a discussion one more time with you, like in a calm way. I just want you to be honest about where you're at in your thinking. And if you need me to clarify something, I'll clarify it. But I'll do this like once more with you in a calm way, right? And I won't interject because I see that is a huge problem for you, even though you agreed to it today. But I won't interject. I just
Oh
need you to
no,
be as
oh no.
honest as
Initially,
possible
once
with
again,
me.
I did not agree to it, but then I said if you were to interject, then I would do the same, and it's not going to be a productive discussion. It just turned out the way I feared it would. Okay, so
Sure.
don't pin it on me as if I agreed to it. I did not. Okay.
Sure. I just want you as honest as possible with me, and I'm willing to absolutely do this once more. If
See,
you're
Patty,
willing
here's the
to.
thing, right? Patty, if you say you're a moral subjectivist, I'm just going to give